Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2.5 of the Learn Swift series, the only episode in which we will write very little Swift code. And this is because I want to take some time to go into our editor, Xcode, our IDE, our Integrated Development Environment, because I'm a strong believer that understanding the tools that you work with is just as important as, using them. Because I've seen a lot of times where programmers waste a lot of time trying to manually do things that their editor can do for them in just one or two clicks. And, it just helps you get faster and more comfortable as a developer. Unfortunately, the code that we've written in this tutorial series so far hasn't really gotten as advanced as it could be, in which we can really utilize all of the features that Xcode can give us, or at least the ones that I use on a daily basis. So I'm going to be using an open source project called BrickHack, which is one that it's on GitHub. I'll leave a link below. It's a bit of quote unquote real world code. It's on the App Store. So it's got a lot to play around with in terms of the editor. So let's just start with some of the basic stuff that Xcode does that you have almost guaranteed seen if you've at least opened Xcode and written something in it. So I'm just going to create a couple variables here. So let's do just the basics. We'll have our name. Our name will be Peter. And then age will be 21. So if I try to print this out, so if I type PR, we can see that Xcode's autocomplete window has come up. Again, this is a standard in all IDEs. Something I saw on Twitter, by the way, the other day, and I've been using Xcode for an extremely long time, and I never knew this. You can actually resize this window. You can make it bigger or smaller depending on what your needs are, which I think is just absolutely fascinating. You can actually move it around too, so if you really like it up here, I think once you start typing again, it'll move it around. Yeah, but it's just kind of a cool little nifty thing. You can press tab, or I think you could also hit enter to select something. I prefer tab, that's just how I work. And this, you can just kind of, type in your code here. So this will be name. And as you can see, it auto-completes the name. It's all the stuff that's pretty straightforward. So once you start building larger and larger projects, you'll run into a few issues. And the first issue is just navigating the file. So this file is quite long. This file is about 453 lines of code. And let's say I'm trying to go back to that method that I was in called view_did_load. Now what I could do is I could just scroll and look for it. Or I can press Command F and type, view_did_load. Oops, if I can type. And that'll get me there. But if I'm calling that method a lot in this file, I have to skip through a lot of things. Xcode has two main ways to get around this. The first is on the top, this breadcrumb navigator. Yes, that is the technical term. And it gives you, just kind of a list of where you are in your file. It doesn't seem that useful. For example, if I'm in this class called timeline event, it shows timeline event up here. If I scroll up a little bit and I just go to the schedule table view controller, it shows schedule table view controller. I can use this to switch between files. So if I want to jump to the, main tab bar controller, I can do that. I can press the back button to go back. But remember, I was trying to get to the view_did_load function in this file. I can actually click this little thing here that says the current thing that I'm in, like the current scope. I could look for it too. And you might say, wow, that's pretty useful. You just got there really quick. But I can do it even faster. So I can actually click on this and start typing view_did_load, and it will filter the entire list for me, and I can just select and jump right to it. This allows for some very quick code navigation, which I absolutely love. So it's 2 a.m. and I was editing this video, and as one does, and I completely forgot to show you guys one of the coolest features that I don't see people use that often, which is if you want to quickly open a file, like if I want to open the events view controller, instead of using my mouse like a peasant, I can type Command-Shift-O, and that gets me the Open Quickly panel, in which I can just type event, and it's right there. And I can press enter, and it does it. And I think there's also a couple other cool things, like if I do events view controller and then I press option and click on it, then it opens it in a split pane. There's all sorts of fun stuff in here. Just literally try random keyboard shortcuts with things and you could do crazy stuff. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the split pane function. So, as you can see, I have quite a few tabs open here, which you can open by pressing the plus on the right side of the screen, or you can just press Command T. And also Command W to close a given tab from the keyboard. And I could have multiple bits of code. So let's say I wanted to look at the resources view controller and the schedule table view controller at the same time. I could kind of keep switching between them. But Xcode, if I click this little tiny button right here, this lets me create a split pane view. Now I'm on a large monitor. I'm on a 27-inch screen, and this is already kind of crowded. So I can there are 3 buttons here for closing the panes around the screen. So I can close the file pane on the left and the assistant editor on the right, and now I have a little bit more room. But there's still something else that's kind of taking up room here, and that is the minimap. So let's talk about the minimap for a little bit. Of course, you can turn it off just by clicking this little code-looking thing and unchecking minimap, or if you don't see it, you can check it and view it. But the minimap is something brand new in Xcode as of a year ago, and it gives you a lot of cool things. For example, I can drag and click to scroll. Okay, that was not very cool. One of the cool things is, as you can see, as I kind of move my mouse around, it highlights every function that I'm kind of mousing over. So this function is convert index, and it shows me the parameter from index path. I can click to it to jump right there. And what's really cool is, one of my favorite features is if I start, it shows where the line is. You can see that little gray line. And kind of like as I start typing, it fills a little gray bar to simulate the code that you're writing. It's so cool. And another feature that I've never used, but I just really like it, is if you hold down Command while hovering over this, it shows you all of the functions in your program. I don't think it's that useful, but you know, I'll take features when I can get them. Another helpful thing is it shows your warnings in yellow, so I can jump right to where there's an issue in the code. So that's the basics of the minimap, and I think it's quite useful. One other thing about split panes is I can actually close the split pane by clicking the X in the top left of each pane here. I can resize it, obviously, but I can also maximize it temporarily. So if I realized, oh crap, I need to write a lot of code in this one file on the right, I can just click this and start writing, and I can minimize it by clicking that same button. Now, one easy way to navigate and change what these files are is using the breadcrumb, as I mentioned before, and this is what I prefer to do. But you can also just make sure you're selected in the class, in the pane that you want to re-navigate in. Sorry, it's a bit wordy. And you could just click a different file. So if I wanted to go to the resources view controller, I'm there. If I want to go to the resources table view controller, I'm there, and so on and so forth. So another feature that I want to go over is not actually enabled by default. You'll need to go to Xcode and then Preferences. By the way, I would suggest just taking 10-20 minutes and just looking through every possible preference, because I can't go over all of them, and you might find something that you find really interesting that I just skip over. And one of those in particular is code folding. So I actually don't even remember where it is. I think it's in, here it is, yeah. So if I check and uncheck this code folding ribbon, this allows me to, fold my code down. So if I don't want to see this view-did-load method, like if I'm trying to work on something up here and something down here, and this is getting in the way, I can hide it by clicking this bar next to it, and it will just kind of fold the code away. So that's very useful. I don't know why they don't enable that by default. Another thing that I would suggest enabling by default is line numbers. I don't understand how people code without line numbers. I like it because if something goes wrong, Xcode compiler will tell you what's wrong and at what line, so I just like having that there. Now, there's more features of Xcode that I'd love to go into, but I don't think that they're quite useful right now. So, for example, in the next couple videos when we go into functions, I'll talk about all the features of Xcode that are useful for functions at that time. So at the moment, I'll just run through a couple other quick things that I find useful. If you open the bottom pane up here, this is where the all of your output is from your program. And as you've seen me do before, there's a little couple buttons down here. So, and you might be wondering what these do. So the right pane here, this is where all of your output goes. And when you start debugging code, which we'll go into in another tutorial, this is where all the debug information is. Sometimes your output window will be very clogged, in which case you click the trash can button to clear it. And that's kind of the basics of that panel. And you can hide it with Command-Shift-Y, and that hides and shows it. Finally, on the left, we have this big file pane, which you could probably figure out is where all the files are. But there's a lot of other things in here that I think are kind of strange. If you press Command and then like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, these will take you through all these tabs at the top. Most of them are actually quite useless in my opinion, aside from this one, which is Search, which you will love to use a lot because it searches across all of your files. So I have, let's say for example, I have this object called timeline event and I want to search for this everywhere. I can just type timeline event and I make sure matching case is selected so I can see all the ones with the same case. And as you can see, I'm just using it in this one file called schedule table view controller, but it lets you kind of view that stuff right in one place. And finally, I would like to go into some really quick keyboard editing tips because this is something that I'm going to be using a lot in my tutorials, and you might be wondering how I'm doing it. So let's say I want to change this 30 to like a 50. If I'm like coding down here and I just finished writing a line of code, I could move my mouse and then click this and change it to like 70 or something. But alternatively, what I do is I hold the up arrow to go back up here, and then I use a couple modifiers. So if you hold the Command key and use the left and right arrows, this will go one line at a time. so I can instantly jump to the beginning or end of a line. This is similar to Windows' home and end key, if you're familiar with that. I can hold down the Option key and go left and right in order to go word by word. So as you can see, I'm going from timer to end of timer to end of schedule timer to the time interval and so on and so forth. And so that's how I can quickly jump to a certain part of the line. And finally, if I want to select something, so let's say I want to select this whole line, I can just combine both those modifiers with Shift. So remember, Command takes us to the end of the line. So if I just hold Command Shift and then do the right arrow key, it will select it. And same thing going backwards. If I hold down Option Shift, I will select word by word. And yeah, and you can of course just let go of the Shift key and move your arrow a little bit and it will deselect. So I use this a lot. So if I'm talking, for example, about timer, I'll select it, and then schedule timer, time interval, and so on and so forth. Our original thing, which I was kind of leading up to, which was I want to change that 30 to like a 70. So if I'm at the beginning of the line, I would just hold down Option, press the right arrow key a few times, and then change that to 70. So just some all tips there. These are things that just take a lot of practice to get used to. I don't think Xcode has a Vim mode for people who like Vim a lot, in which case you could probably just use Vim and you're probably happy with that. Although feel free to yell at me in the comments if you found a magical workflow in Xcode for Vim because, it's interesting. And there's one other small feature of Xcode that I think is kind of recent, but Sublime Text I think does it much better, which is multiple cursors. So if I'm trying to, let's say I want to change both of these to a let. Actually, let's say I have a few more variables here. Let's say I have var name, var age. Let's do var, species is human, var fave color equals blue. I don't know. And I want to change all these to lets. I could just click each one and type let, and then let, and then let, but that's really slow. So instead what I can do is I can hold down the Option key and I just drag vertically. And this creates 4 cursors. So as you can see, I can hold down Option and Shift, I can select var, and I can just type let. And I have instantly changed all of these to lets. This is something that you won't really use that often, but I think is quite cool. And we can even combine this with our previously learned keyboard shortcuts. So if I hold down, let's say I want to rename all these variables and I want to add like a prefix after it, I can hold down the Option key, press right, and notice how each line has only advanced by 1 word. It doesn't advance everything by the same interval as if I just pressed the arrow key. So I can do like name of user. So now it's name of user, age of user, species of user, and fave color of user. So I think that's actually pretty useful at times. I will just undo those changes. So yeah, that was a very quick, very brief overview of Xcode. Trust me, it's got a lot more to offer than what I just showed you, and we'll discover more of it as we go along. In the next video, which will actually be next week, I'll be going over functions, and that'll give us some more tools to play around with in Xcode, and it'll help us write a little bit better code. So thanks for watching. Hope you stick around for the next video, and let me know other programming or non-programming or even music stuff you want to see on my channel, because I am actually going to be uploading somewhat regularly. Thanks for watching. I'm a nomad.